On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, we're going to continue our season preview episodes with Kade Kimball, talking all about how good this Thunder team can be this season.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, media member, and editor-in-chief over at thunderousintentions.com, Rylan Stiles. You can follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. And you can even text the show at 405-963-3686. Joining me today is Kade Kimball on today's show, which is brought to you by Jace Medical. Jace Medical is able to empower you when you purchase a Jace case. It provides you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50-plus infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. Kade, how are you doing today?
Ready for some Thunder basketball, just about a week away from Media Day. Then we got basketball right around the corner.
Right around the corner, Kade Kimball of Inside the Thunder, Sports Illustrated Fan Nation.com. Media Day, Sam talks this week, players and coaches talk next week, then it's training camp, and then it's preseason the next Monday, and away we go with basketball. Kade, there's a lot of excitement about this Thunder team. You and I have both talked about how this is going to be the most exciting season, in my opinion, since the OK3 year. I think it's even more exciting than the following Paul George, Russell Westbrook year, and of course every year after that. So this is going to be fun. And so when you look at this Thunder team, how good can this team be seeding-wise? Like, what do you think that this team could reach in terms of playoff seeding?
I tweeted it out today, and J.J. Redick had his quote saying, Jalen Williams is a star. He will be a star, and he might even be an all-star this year. And I tweeted, if he's an all-star this year, the Thunder might be the number 3 seed in the West heading into the all-star, whenever the voting ends. Realistically, jumping into the top 4 would not surprise me. Again, as we mentioned the last time I was on the podcast, it would take a very good season for that to happen, jump to the top 4. I think anywhere in the top 6 is really realistic. This team is a playoff team. They've shown their capabilities of being a postseason team last year. And given the jumps that, everyone is going to be able to make, Chet Holmgren addition, Cason Wallace addition, top 6 just seems very reasonable. And, that top 4 realm, if everything goes right, it could be realistic.
So with that, FanDuel's over-under on the Thunder is set at 44.5 wins. Will the Thunder hit the over on wins or the under on wins? You get even odds on either side.
I think I'm going to go with the over. I'm slowly talking myself more into this team being, jumping into that top 5, top 4 seed every single day as basketball gets near and near. And I think more about this team, what it can do, the different ways it can attack other teams. I lean over now. I leaned under initially, but I think I lean over now.
A lot has changed since the summer. The Thunder have made a lot of big additions to this roster. Now, who do you think is the biggest swing player for the Thunder? Like, if the Thunder do take another leap, because going with a 16-win improvement last year and then making another big leap this year would be an anomaly in the NBA, and it's just really hard to do. But in order for them to do that, what player could swing things? For me, to give an example, I've always said that, like, if Ousmane Dieng really bursts onto the scene and plays the way that he's capable of, then that really elevates this Thunder roster. Who is a player in your mind that if they can come out and produce, elevates this Thunder roster?
I like the Dieng pick, but kind of thinking about, Giddey obviously might have the highest ceiling on what lead he could take this season. But if Williams really does get to that level of 20 points per game, remaining efficient, and you just have that second guy every single night, and whenever you say Shai's not getting to the line as much, can't hit those mid-range, just out of rhythm for whatever reason, and Williams can pick that up with 20, 25 points, they're going to be a threat every single night. So I think if Williams really does take that leap, like people are expecting, like J.J. Redick is expecting, former NBA player, NBA media member, if he can take that leap, good things are going to happen with this team. And on a nightly basis, there's going to be consistent offensive production.
Do you agree with J.J. Redick that unlike other teams who, like, you might want to keep an eye on, the Thunder are going to be so good that they force you to watch them? Because they were good last year. They were a really competitive team last year. It didn't force the national media to watch them. Do you think that this year it is going to be a team that you just have to see?
I admittedly was this way with the Kings last year. The beam, maybe it ran its course a little quickly, but nonetheless, they were a fun team, fun atmosphere. The arena was loud. With Loud City, we saw the comeback last season. If they're here every single day at the arena, every game, there's no reason people shouldn't have their eyes glued on the Thunder. You've got exhilarating young players, just a ton of fun talent that plays a very unique offense that you don't see with every NBA team. So I think, they almost are a must-watch team, a league pass team, and NBA national TV team whenever they are on the national TV stations. But just the amount of young talent they've got, and you're going to see somebody new perform every single night. They might run 12 deep. You might see somebody new that you haven't really heard much of or seen much of, like an Isaiah Joe, like an Aaron Wiggins, that they haven't got the national love, but they might on the national stage this year just because more people are going to be glued on the Thunder.
So I agree. I think that the Thunder, especially as you mentioned, if they can get the Paycom Center rocking again, because that was a common trait of the first run where everyone was just wanting to see the Thunder play, not only for Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant and everyone else, but because it felt like watching a college atmosphere at an NBA game, and there weren't very many venues like it. If the fan base can get it rocking and the players, of course, live up to the hype, this can be a really fun season, and they can be the story of the NBA. Now, Kate, I think that we can both agree that if we were projecting the starting lineup, it would be SGA, Josh Giddey, Lou Dort, J-Dub, and Chet. But who would be the 5 best players in the lineup for you? Like that's the starting lineup. But if you had to compile the best lineup on paper right now, in your opinion, would it be that same 5, or is there going to be a different lineup that is actually going to end up performing better?
I think if you look at the on-court metrics, a lineup that might perform better, and it's going to change from last year, but you have the Shai plus shooters lineup, and you've got a lot of capable shooters this year. I think if you implement Shai plus J-Dub, so 2 point-of-attack guys that are going to have the ball, going to penetrate a defense, then you have an Isaiah Joe, you have a Chet Holmgren, and then insert any 4 you want, or 3 if you want J-Dub playing the 4 as a shooter. So maybe Bertans, maybe even Aaron Wiggins, just keep the ball moving. That lineup might be one of the best on-court metrics because they're going to play fast. They're going to shoot the 3 ball efficiently. They're going to play well. They're not going to play a ton together. They might play a few minutes each quarter, maybe even less. Maybe not even see that the lineup like that in any game. But that would be one of the best on-court teams in terms of just on-court production, quick firepower offense. They're going to be scrappy defensively. You've got Chet holding it down. You've got Isaiah Joe, who's going to be scrappy, and Jalen Williams can really play that point-of-attack defender role if they don't have Lou Dort on the court. So they kind of fit the mold of everything you need for a successful lineup, and it'd be a fun, fast lineup to watch.
So you alluded to this question earlier, but which of these 2 players gives the team the most upside to win games this season and make a huge leap? Would it be Josh Giddey making a huge leap and that gives the team the most upside, or J-Dub giving the team the most upside if they were to go and make a big leap this season?
Again, I think Josh Giddey has the more potential to take a bigger leap this season, but I think Jalen Williams right now will have the better impact, given the nature of what the Thunder have and what they need. And Josh Giddey's role, not that it's undervalued, but it can be replaced in different ways in the sense of the way they run their offense is just like 5 different guys attacking the offense. Anybody can attack on a different play. You don't need a Giddey facilitator every single play. Is there times where that's valuable? Yes. Is there times that's going to control games? Yes. But Jalen Williams' ability to score, keep the offense moving, and at times just fit alongside of Shai just so well. I think it has a better impact short term.
So I think that the most exciting part of this season is part of Chet Holmgren's debut. Like that's part of the reason why that this season is so anticipated, just because he's the highest pick of the rebuild and you haven't really gotten to see him yet. It's as if you got like the exact toy you wanted for Christmas last Christmas and didn't get to use it until next Christmas. For Chet Holmgren, do you have any sort of prediction? This can be a stat line. This can be just a strong feeling about what a career high would be for his rookie season. This can be just a description of what you think his impact on the team will be. Just anything that you want to get out there on the record about Chet Holmgren.
I think 2 things will be true this season. I think he'll average over 8.5 rebounds, which is people are worried about his size. I think that's going to be no issue, especially as how spaced out the league is. Just kind of him being on there, being in the right position. He's a very smart basketball player. You see that with the weak side block. So I think just being a very smart basketball player, understanding positioning, obviously having athleticism and height, going to get over 8.5 rebounds. And I think he'll have multiple 30 balls this year. I don't think, it's going to be a very consistent thing for him to get 20 plus, but I think when he does, it'll be a 30 plus game because he showed in summer league, obviously very small sample size that he can get hot, knock down a few threes and get going. The fundamentals down the lane, a lot of different ways he can attack an offense. And then you've got, like we've mentioned a lot, you got Gilgeous-Alexander, Giddey, Williams. There's a lot of attention on those guys, even a Lou Dort backdoor screen, whatever it may be. There's a lot of ways to attack this with this offense. So Chet's going to get a lot of easy looks and a lot of games where it's just like, oh, there he is, a lob, and then a couple threes, just a few really loud plays, and all of a sudden he has 30. So I think both those can be true this season.
Coming up, we're going to talk about what's next for the Thunder and play a game of fact or fiction on today's Locked On Thunder podcast. But first, I want to tell you right now about our good friends over at Jace Medical. Folks, everyone should feel empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during an unexpected event. That's why Jace Medical offers the Jace case. The Jace case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use, and it gives you the peace of mind so that you know that if something were to happen, you're not just hoping that you can get access to the medication in an emergency. You have the medication on hand in the Jace case. The Jace Medical supplier is great at handling the online evaluation with a licensed pharmacist, and it is going to be delivered to you with ongoing consultations and care for you. So do not get caught unprepared. Be prepared and have these life-saving antibiotics on hand for you by going to Jace Medical. And when you do, you can use the code Locked On. So you're going to get $20 off of these life-saving antibiotics today from Jace Medical by using the code Locked On at checkout. That's jasemedical.com, JASE medical.com, and they will hook you up there if you use the code Locked On with $20 off. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Rylan Stiles. Joining us is Kade Kimball from InsideTheThunder.com. Kade, the big question from this Thunder fan base has been about the Thunder adding a star. And it feels as though this rebuild has went at warp speed. So I can't blame the fans for already moving past to the what's next phase and wanting to cash in these chips and quote unquote go all in. The issue is the Thunder have played 0 minutes with their core, and they're not even scratching the surface of being at that stage yet for me. And I think that you saw Mark allude to that on his NBA.com interview where he talked about how continuity is king, and you look at the Denver Nuggets, and it was the 5th, 6th, 7th playoff series until they got over the hump and they were able to win a championship. And while they made some moves and they improved their roster, that same core still needed time to develop and to grow, and they waited on some of those moves until they got closer to the final destination, which was winning a championship. And so for you, will the Thunder trade for a star, or do you think that this rebuild can be quote unquote complete with a trade for just like a nice role player or a really good 5th starter?
I really think the 5th starter is the way to go. Like you mentioned, this core hasn't played a minute together yet. I think even people who are saying, let's do it, this trade deadline, you'll have half a season is not enough to see this team together. Chet Holmgren and Lou Dort might have one of the best defensive duos in the entire league. The way that the team plays defense, like you just want to see that together, not even just together, but to mesh, have time to thrive. And there's a lot of, like you said, the rebuild has been accelerated. It's went really fast. You can't help that. And something Presti and the Thunder have preached since the beginning of the rebuild is patience. So if you can't control how fast people are developing and how fast you're getting good, what can you control is, stay having that patience. And what that looks like now is don't make any crazy trades. Like once you've maybe gotten to a Western Conference Finals or, deep into a second round series, maybe 6-7 games, and you're like, well, you look at the team and we have this hole here, this hole there. That's something you can patch with the 5th starter. You might not need a star. That might just disrupt everything you've worked the last 3 years for, acquiring certain players that fit a certain mold. And you might not be able to get that anywhere else from a star level. If J-Dub and Shai are 2 stars and Chet and Giddey are borderline stars and you're getting great production from Dort as a 5th starter, why do you have to mess with that? Maybe your 5th starters, maybe that's even just a 6th man. Maybe that's just a flamethrower guy off the bench that you want as a 6th man that's going to get 18, 22 minutes per game range, just some small. So I don't think it's necessary to trade for a 5th star. It might even be hurtful in the long run to trade for a 5th star, not because they're going to use all their assets, because they have so much that's not much of an issue in this scenario. They have so much young talent that you could trade a few away and still have a few left over that are just in the development system. So it's not that it hurts them in terms of assets, but it might hurt the on-court production, how things mesh and mold. And I think this team deserves like you said, like the Nuggets have done, 5-6 years trying before you really assess, like, hey, we need an Aaron Gordon. Hey, we need a KCP. Fit those holes that you realize you've had over the past few years.
Yeah, and I think that it also is true that the postseason is not what is a different brand of basketball. So like you don't know which of these players is going to have postseason deficiencies and which of these players are going to completely rise to the occasion and get there. I think right now everything's gone so great for the Thunder that we forget that there's going to be struggle, there's going to be setback, there's going to be guys who just frankly don't pan out. Like there's still going to be someone who does not hit their ceiling and does not develop at the pace that you think that they should or would or could. And there's going to be guys who play really good in the regular season, and then in the postseason, their game changes, and it is not as good as it is in the 82 game stretch. They're an 82 game player and a 16 game player, and so that happens with everybody. That happens with every core and every team and every organization. And so what you don't want to do is just rush into something, lock yourself into a bad fit. And that's what Minnesota did, in my opinion. And I always hate to bash on Minnesota, but they got that taste of success, and then they've locked themselves into a terrible fit for their organization. And now they're trying to pivot and trying to recover and trying to make it work. But had they been patient and still had all those assets to make a big move, that ruined the trade market, I guarantee you if they could go back in time, they would not want to ruin the trade market for Rudy Gobert. Like they would not want to do that anymore after seeing this team play, even on a small sample size, because they were hurt last year on top of that. So I agree that the star thing is a little bit premature. Now, the arena thing real quickly. If you have any thoughts on the arena, you can, of course, share them. But I have a question of what are the three things that you would hope that a potential new arena would include?
Man, that's a tough one. I want to see. This is not much of the arena. I want to see a new logo on the floor of the new arena. I think it's time. I know they like to be. You can still incorporate a lot of the Dorito chip logo, however you want to describe the logo, however you want to look at it. You can still incorporate it a lot, but with a new chapter turning, you've got this new era like they had 15 years ago with Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant. You've got this new era of young stars. There's no better time to rebuild. Maybe build some familiarity with these young stars in Oklahoma City, and then flip the switch. Not only do you establish the branding, but you've already got the people that maybe liked the team 15 years ago. The rebuild came, they didn't pay attention as much. They're back. They're not familiar. They're paying attention. And then boom, you hit them with a little switch of a new logo, maybe an alternate logo. I don't know. In some fashion, get a logo on the ground. Next one, it'd be really tough, but just more seats. You want as much fans as possible to be at the game. You want the best environment possible. And then kind of along with that is you want a great sound system almost. I want to say, I don't really know how to explain other than like you want your fans to be heard. You want Loud City to be loud. You want to be a tough environment to play. And you want to be the team that, as Curry alluded to this offseason, that you want to go in silence. You want to be that crowd that's just so annoying and loud. And then lastly, this is not much, again, about the arena itself, but more hotels around the arena. If you want to be a big league city like Mayor Holt often says, then you need more hotels. You want to be hosting all-star games. You want to be able to host events, maybe a summer league portion like Salt Lake City does. You need more hotels surrounding the arena and making it a real destination.
So I think that the sound system is absolutely needed. They improved the Jumbotron this year in the current arena. I was going to say that one. The one that I have that is left off the list so far is Thunder Alley returning. I don't know if they're going to still call it Thunder Alley, but like just an outdoor experience, because hopefully they're going to be selling out the arena, and there's going to be fans who are overflow fans that want to be around the arena and experience big games and experience big moments rooting on the Thunder. And so kind of like the Deer District, like the Jurassic Park in Toronto, and kind of a staple of what we've seen for other organizations. And if they could conjure up a beam-like scheme, I don't know what it would be. Maybe like shoot off thunderbolts into the air. I don't know. That'd be pretty fun too. And then I would be stunned if there wasn't more seating, because the whole messaging has been that the arena is not only the smallest in terms of seating, but also square footage. And so I would imagine they're going to improve both of those things on this new arena if it does pass. And we'll see what the fans vote for and the citizens vote for on December 12th. Now, we're going to play a game of Fact or Fiction, and it's going to range through a variety of topics about this Thunder team. Plus, we're going to give you our hot takes, both about the Thunder and the NBA that we're sitting on ahead of this season. That's all coming up on today's Locked On Thunder podcast. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you, talking Thunder basketball. Subscribe for free across all podcasting platforms so you never miss an episode. As you're listening to this, I'm on the way to the Sam Presti presser. I'll be back afterward to recap that press conference, and then on Friday we'll have another guest to preview this exciting season for the Thunder. Kade from InsideTheThunder.com. Let's dive into a game that we both love of fact or fiction, and let's start it out with one that I think is very fun. Fact or fiction, Chet Holmgren will average 2 blocks or more this season.
Fact. He's just I said it earlier, he's a very smart player. He understands, not only is he smart, but he's so athletic and so tall that he can cover a lot of the ground in the lane. The way the Thunder play, pushing people off the three-point line, having them run at him. I think it'll become an issue late in the season of teams kind of not going in the paint as much just because they know he's down there. They know he'll block the shot or, if nothing else, contest it. But I think early in the season especially, there's going to be some 4 or 5 block games just because he's that athletic and he's that smart.
I think it's going to be fun to kind of see what the Chet block numbers look like, because it was insane to watch him in Summer League. And we had the Jaren Jackson Jr. controversy last year that people kind of forget of the Memphis scorebookers cooking the numbers of at the scorekeepers table of his blocks at home. Could we see Blockgate 2.0 with Chet? Who knows? But sticking with Chet, fact or fiction, Chet Holmgren, who is second in odds right now on FanDuel to do it, wins Rookie of the Year.
I'm going to go fiction. There's too much hype for Victor Wembanyama. He could shoot the ball not very well and still probably win Rookie of the Year just because it's so narrative-driven, and he's got every bit of the narrative behind him. If he even averages, say, just around what Chet does, and, the Thunder way overperform the Spurs, it's Victor Wembanyama. It's Wemby. It's who everyone went to Vegas for. He's going to come out on top.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that Victor, as long as he just plays, will get the award, because partly just due to, like you said, narratives of you can't hype this guy up as the best prospect since LeBron and then he loses Rookie of the Year, and I don't think that the voters will allow that. So as long as he plays and is somewhat good, then he'll win the award. Now, another award. This time, the Thunder have the first place on FanDuel to win the award. Will Mark win Coach of the Year? Fact or fiction?
I think it's hard not to give it to him if the Thunder jump into an insecure playoff spot, in my opinion. But more importantly, that top 4 threshold that I've mentioned quite a few times, Mike Brown and the Kings, they want it making the similar jump after a year of like, oh, they've got the guys, but that put it together. They put it together. They made a few small moves, which in this case is just bringing Chet and Cason Wallace in. And you have a very impactful season with those guys. And Mark Daigneault's scheme is a lot of it. The culture he's built, the on-court system he's built is a lot of why they're going to be able to be a playoff team so soon in this rebuild. I think it's hard to not give it to him, especially when he became the runner-up this last year as a 10 seed.
So I've been leaning toward fiction, not because of anything to do with Mark. And if you've listened to this podcast, you know that in January of his first season, which remember didn't start until December, I said that he was the best Thunder coach of all time because he's a really, really, really good coach. But I think Coach of the Year is likely the most narrative-driven award that there is in the NBA, and has really little to do with how you coach and more to do with your storyline of your team. And the reason that I lean fiction is because I think that the NBA voters might feel like they've kind of given Mark his flowers, and then whatever the big story is this year, there's going to be a surprise story. For example, last year, if the Kings didn't break that playoff drought, then Mark's the Coach of the Year. But who could have foreseen that happening, that they would go on that run to be not only a playoff team or a postseason team, be the 3 seed. So if there's another team like that who leapfrogs the Thunder and leapfrogs the Thunder in terms of storyline, and everyone's just kind of assuming the Thunder will be a really good team again, but there's another surprise team out there that wins Coach of the Year, then I think that you would, of course, get better odds than someone else on this betting aspect of things. But I think that Mark is one of the better coaches in the NBA, and he's not going to get that credit as one of the best, tactical coaches in the NBA until he does it in the playoffs, because that's when the majority of people evaluate coaches is in the playoff series, because it's just easier to evaluate coaches in the playoffs because you can kind of see the adjustments game to game. But if you follow Mark, he's a really, really, really good coach. I think he should have won it last year, but I understand why the Kings were able to secure the award for Mike. And so I think that he has a good shot to do it. Obviously, he's the leader in the clubhouse, but you got to be wary of a bigger narrative coming and sweeping away this award from right under Mark's feet. On the other hand, though, we have seen where the voters have been a year behind on these awards. Like Monty Williams was one where he was kind of a year behind on getting his Coach of the Year award from whenever he actually deserved it. And so maybe you can see the same thing with Mark this year. Now, fact or fiction, SGA is a first-team All-NBA player again.
I'm going to lean fiction. Again, narrative. It's positionless now. So on top of that, that makes things harder as is. I'm almost expecting a little bit of a very, very minimal slight dip in statistics. You've got Jalen Williams, you've got Chet Holmgren, you got Giddey. Lou Dort's going to command, however many shots he does per game. Like, those are people who are going to take shots and make an impact with it. And Shai's going to play efficiently, but and he's going to take the most shots, but what does that look like? How often is he getting to the free throw line? So I think that on top of, like you said, just, I don't even want to say voter fatigue because it was his first year making it, but I think it's more likely he makes a second or third team, especially because a lot of the Thunder success is going to be alluded to what help SGA has. What leap does Jalen Williams make? What leap does Giddey make? What impact does Chet make? And I think that's going to be a lot of what people direct the Thunder success to. Whereas last season it was Shai breaking out into an all-star, all-NBA player, averaging over 30 points per game on over 50% efficiency. A lot of it was like, he's really that guy, and they're winning, and they're a playing team, and they won 40 games. This year it's going to be a lot of, okay, now he has all this help around him, and they won 44, 45, 46 games. So I think the narrative is going to flip a little bit more around the team, and therefore it's going to flip a little bit around about him. And it's not really on him or that he's going to play much worse, but just about why the Thunder are winning and why people perceive that.
So that's interesting. I think that he will be an All-NBA player. I think that first, second, and third teams doesn't matter in the sense of predicting them. It matters once you get there, but it's hard to predict like who's going to have the caliber of season to be first, second, or third, because it's just something that's just hard to predict of who's going to be better because the margins are so thin of like Shai, Luka, Jay, Ja, Shai, all these guys like you're going to see, and Ja is going to be suspended, so he might not even hit the marker to be considered for the honor if he misses too many games under the new game played rule. So it's just going to be kind of weird to see who's going to make the first, second, and third. But I do think that Shai makes All-NBA in some capacity. I would still put him first team for now, but we'll see who just has an epic season of basketball. Now, fact or fiction, Micic is a staple of Mark's rotation. So what I mean by this would be, we've seen Mark, of course, flip through the roster and explore the roster. And there's moments where certain guys get random DNP CDs and then other guys play. And then you're wondering kind of where this guy went. But with this fact or fiction, Micic plays in every game where he is healthy.
I want to say fact. I think he plays in every game he's healthy. To what extent, I don't know. But I think he'll be used in some capacity every single game in a role that's pretty similar to the game before. I think his impact will be the same. The impact that's expected of him will be the same. But in what level of minutes, it just depends on how, maybe Giddey shooting or what some guard is performing. But I think in some impact, in some aspect, he'll be playing in every single game he's healthy.
Fact or fiction, Ousmane Dieng is a steady rotational player. So, again, we know Mark's going to change things up. Mark's going to play 10 to 12 guys a night. And so he might still get a few DNPs, but ultimately, Dieng will be a pretty stable piece of the rotation. Fact or fiction?
I want to lean fact because there's no way he doesn't mature from where he was last season, and he already showed those signs of maturity last season. I think a lot of it rides on whether Poku comes back healthy, and not healthy in the sense of he can play, but healthy in the sense of he can play and he's playing very good. And then what level of impact he's making early. And I wonder if they almost kind of, I don't want to say split the rotation, but certain matchups or certain games, you want Poku's rim protection over Dieng's, offensive additions or whatever it may be. But I almost want to say it kind of wavers a little bit there, but I think ultimately Dieng will come out on top.
So fact or fiction, last one, Cason Wallace. He plays at least 3 games with the Blue as part of development. So this is not due to injury or anything. It's just like, hey, we need you with more reps. We need you with more development. So with this fact or fiction, will he play at least 3 games with the Blue as part of his development?
I'll say fact because you see these double headers, and he might play in the double headers if he's not expecting much burn that night. You've got Trey Mann, which this is the interesting wrinkle is you might want to see Trey Mann more in the big leagues, and Cason Wallace, you want to just purely develop him. You're not really getting you're not really necessarily measuring where he's at in the NBA right now. You might just want to develop him. So you send him to the G League, let Trey show in the NBA where he's at. So you might, give priority to Trey Man just because of his situation, a little bit older, running out of time per se, whereas Cason Wallace is the 10th pick. And, you really are just focused on developing, not getting a baseline knowledge of where he's at. And later in the season, you might be like, okay, Cason Wallace, now you can have your big NBA minutes to come in and improve what you learned this season with the G League.
So I think that with Cason Wallace, it's going to be interesting because I think that he has the skill set that Mark really loves and that Mark will want to play. But you're right. The Thunder love to use the blue, rightfully so. They have a great coaching staff with Cam Woods. They have a great system that they run that's similar to the Thunder. And so I think that will be a good opportunity for Cason Wallace. And it's not a demotion. It just helps him develop and grow. And I don't think that'll play a ton of G League games because I think he's going to be that good right away. And I think he's going to play right away. But given how crowded the roster is, I think he'll play somewhat the blue just to get him some more reps. Now, Cade, let's end it here. Give me your hottest take, the hottest you can think of. It's got to be a hot one for the Thunder and for the general NBA. Let's go with Thunder first.
Thunder first. I'll go Giddey shoots 37% from 3 or better.
I like it. Now, what's your NBA hot take?
Oh, I was not prepared for this one. We'll go with Magic are a top 6 seed. So not only do they jump into the postseason, but they jump into, I don't know how hot that is, but they're like a playoff team, and they're going to make their arrival.
That is a hot take that I would consider this. When I hit end record, I'm going to go get a coffee from Starbucks. Venti hot coffee. I'm not going to give you my order yet. From the time I leave Starbucks to the time I get home to sit down and produce more content for you all, the level of hotness of that coffee is that hot take. It's lost some steam. It's lost some hotness, but it's still a nice hot cup of joe. So you, in essence, are that venti white hot mocha.
I'll take it.
So it's not the hottest thing in the world. We're not drinking black coffee right out of the spout.
If it needs to get a little bit hotter, just throw them into the top 5 seed. Just throw another seed in there. Maybe they won't be a 6 seed. Maybe they'll be a 5 seed. Make it a little bit hotter.
If you go to 4 seed, it would be like brewing a cup of coffee.
I don't know if I can do that yet.
Okay, then it's not going to be drinking black coffee right out of the spout.
That's fair. That's fair.
But it's still a hot take. It's still appreciated. Cade, let them know where they can find you on Twitter and, of course, InsideTheThunder.com and the Inside the Thunder podcast.
Go to @Kade Kimball. I'll tweet out all the links of things I produce. I'll retweet everything that the rest of the team at InsideTheThunder.com produces. Look us up on YouTube at Inside the Thunder to find our weekly shows.
And if you are a sad Oklahoma State fan, you can also find Cade running the Oklahoma State Fan Nation site as well, because, goodness, I feel bad for your football fandom. But hopefully you guys can turn it around. Maybe. Cade, thanks for joining us. And until tomorrow, be good and be good to one another.